This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you might not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Ruffman. I am your host, John Ruffman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going. So I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. There is so much to talk about this morning. And of course, even as I am recording this particular podcast, more news is breaking. Let's first talk about Iran. The president has said that he's extending the ceasefire. But of course, the Iranians don't care about the ceasefire, and clearly they are not participating in the ceasefire. So what we have is a president who doesn't understand, or maybe he does but can't admit it, that logistically, Iran is still a problem, a big problem. Let me point out that it appears that with the Iranians there is no final decision maker. The new successor, Grand Ayatollah, has not been seen since his father was killed. And now we are left with a situation of negotiation when J.D. Vance is about to depart for Islamabad and then can't because there's no one to talk to on the other side. Iran and the situation there is critical. There are constant meetings now at the White House to try to figure out what to do. But it's very clear, and those of us who are listening carefully, that the Iranians are not interested in a ceasefire with the United States. In fact, and I hate to say this, it appears to me that the Iranians are saying, come on, do what you have to do. We can take it. Remember that the Iranian government, which is still in place, has not been replaced, despite Donald Trump's protestations to the contrary. It is now clear to me that the situation in Iran, and particularly in the Strait of Hormuz, is going to continue to be a problem. Let's point out that the president has said repeatedly, the Strait of Hormuz is now opened. It's not. We know it's closed. 3 more ships interdicted just in the last few hours. This is a national and international crisis of the first order. The Iranian government, which doesn't speak with one voice, which is part of the problem, but the Iranian government is indicating through channels that they are not prepared to extend the ceasefire. And so what we have now is a standoff. And the president of the United States, and if you take all of his statements cumulatively since this war began, you can see he's been off base on almost all of them. By the way, not necessarily his fault. I've never trusted the Iranians. The Iranians are a major threat to international order. Their potential to develop a nuclear weapon is catastrophic. And the simple fact is they are ruled by radical Islamists. It's a problem. And now we have to see how it sorts itself out. I could spend a lot of time on Iran, but we will see how it unfolds, and we'll do it every day, I'm sure. Just a quick word about J.D. Vance. He's caught in the middle of a problem. He was designated by the president the chief negotiator, and yet there was no one with whom to negotiate. I don't think it hurts J.D. Vance, but it certainly doesn't help him. Now I want to deal with another situation that I think is very critical. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, has announced that flu shots will not be required now for American military. This is consistent with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his anti-vax approach. Those of us who understand history know that when the great influenza hit in 1918, 1919, we had only wished that there had been a vaccine. The fact that the administration is so irresponsible as to suggest that a vaccine is now a matter of personal conscience, they don't seem to understand. You may choose not to have a vaccination, but then you shouldn't be exposing your fellow comrades in arms to the potential of the flu. There is something fundamentally flawed in this administration beyond everything else you can talk about. The fact that they reject science, that they reject the idea of vaccines, the fact, and I listened carefully to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who was asked directly, whether or not he would interfere with vaccine administration, and his answers were clear. He's going to do what he wants. And we understand that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., in the words of his own family, is anti-science. He's anti-vax, and it's a problem, and he should not be in the position he's in. And frankly, if I were in the American military, I'd be concerned. Remember, if you leave it to people to decide whether or not to have a shot, just take a look at the measles epidemic here in the United States. The fact that the administration is now downplaying vaccinations is causing a surge in measles. This, my friends, is nuts, and it's because of an administration that is wrong-headed, anti-science, and leading us in the wrong direction. Thank God for vaccines, and anybody who doubts that for a moment, well, they're anti-science, and that to me is just plain nuts. We have another situation that we better talk about, the investigation of the Southern Poverty Law Center. You understand, and I understand, that Donald Trump and his administration have weaponized the Justice Department. They are out to get people who oppose Donald Trump. And the Southern Poverty Law Center is just such an organization. Now, let me remind everyone that even as reputable traditionally as a group like the FBI paid for information, when we went after whoever they were, didn't matter. The idea of using bribes in order to achieve intelligence information was a standard procedure for the FBI. And I want to point out to you that that is precisely what the Southern Poverty Law Center is doing. Yes, it's true. They paid money to people who were spying on other extremist groups. And that is what you do when you're in intelligence. Even local police departments offer rewards for intelligence information. This is, again, catastrophic on the part of this administration. I want to be clear about this. The Southern Poverty Law Center is a constructive, vital force on behalf of civil rights in the United States. I have contributed to them in the past and intend to contribute to them in the future. Let's be clear. This administration is using the Justice Department as a weapon against its political opponents. I thought during the days of Richard Nixon, we had seen the last of weaponization. I really did. And I regret to say that this administration, well, qualitatively, quantitatively, in every way, makes Richard Nixon and his people look like saints. So be aware that the Justice Department has been weaponized and that we now face the consequences. There is yet another story. You've heard of the Board of Peace, set up by Donald Trump. Do you know that the Board of Peace has spent $1.25 billion? There's no congressional authorization, no oversight, no controls. This is money that Donald Trump has appropriated, and I'd like to know where he got it from in order to do these dastardly things that he is doing within the administration. There is no doubt that Donald Trump's Board of Peace is his vision to perpetuate his own involvement after he leaves office. And you will note that in the Board of Peace, which Donald Trump chairs, that provision exists, that it isn't the President of the United States who is the head of the Board of Peace, it is Donald J. Trump. This needs to be monitored. Congress needs to understand it. And when we are talking, my dear friends, about $1.25 billion, where are the Republicans? Where is their responsible action? You and I understand that the Republican Party is not what it once was, but what is happening now is nothing less than obscene. And that leads me to the vote which took place in Virginia and the question of redistricting. Traditionally, redistricting was done every 10 years, but it was Donald Trump and his instigation which caused Texas to decide to redistrict not in an appropriate fashion or appropriate year, but in the middle of what was an attempt to seize more seats in the House of Representatives. Well, Virginia, a purple state, put it on the ballot. And I'm going to tell you, it wasn't a landslide, but it was decisive. The Democrats won, and it appears now that the Virginia delegation may in fact, now have 10 Democrats to 1 Republican. It is a self-inflicted wound, not by the Republican Party itself, but by Donald Trump. And the fact that Donald Trump has pushed redistricting in the way he has is shameful. Let me remind you that in California, more than 60% of the electorate voted in response to this redistricting attempt by Trump to redistrict California's congressional districts. Again, this will account for an increase, I believe, in the number of Democrats in the House of Representatives. In short, Donald Trump's attempt to seize control of the redistricting process and ensure a Republican majority in the last 2 years of his presidency has failed. What we are now going to see, without any question, is a Democratic surge, and that will mean that the Democrats will control the House. It also, by the way, impacts the Senate. The Republicans are now in trouble in terms of control of the Senate, and they are fighting back with everything they have. Remember that control of the Senate is critical in terms of Supreme Court nominees. And as you know, there is pressure now on Alito and Thomas, who are older conservative justices, to retire before the next election so that a conservative majority can be maintained on the Supreme Court. This blatant, and I must say, unprecedented attempt by a political party to pull these kinds of tricks is terrible. By the way, let's be clear. It's happened before. Remember when Franklin D. Roosevelt, a Democrat, tried to purge members of the court? He proposed court packing, and it failed. It failed, and this should fail. And this is something that really is shameful in terms of the Trump administration and the Republicans. And now I want to say a word about Bible reading. As you saw yesterday, Donald Trump read from the Bible as part of a national Bible reading event. I have no problem with the president quoting the Bible, but I want to remind you of what I said the other day. The United States is not, and never has been, a Christian nation. It is a nation which relies on biblical ideas and thoughts, but not in a partisan way. Remember, this country has no particular religion. This country is open to people of all faiths: Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, you name it. We have every kind of person, including, and I point this out enthusiastically, atheists. Do you understand? It's very important to understand that atheists have as much right in this country to not pray as a person of religion has to pray. And so we better understand that when the President of the United States injects himself into matters of religion, it is a serious concern. We have seen the battle between Donald Trump and the Pope de-escalate. It has de-escalated in large measure because it was a no-win for the president. He has decided to step back a little bit, not completely. And so we understand that Pope Leo will now prevail in terms of his arguments with Donald Trump. But in the meantime, there are those who would suggest that for a president of the United States to engage in religion is really not appropriate. I refer you to John F. Kennedy's brilliant speech before the Houston Ministerial Association delivered in September of 1960. You can hear it and you can read it by going online. It defines, from President Kennedy's point of view, the issue of religion in American politics. It is a brilliant statement. By the way, one of those who helped him to prepare it was Ted Sorensen, his notorious and great friend, his speechwriter, a man who understood the president. So I want everyone to understand very clearly that this remains an issue. All right, we've covered a lot this morning, and there's a lot more to cover during the day. And believe me, we will continue to watch and monitor, and I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. You can write a review on Apple Podcasts, drop a comment on YouTube or Spotify, and click any of the links in the show notes to connect with me on social media. And that includes, through those notes, questions that you may choose to ask me for our question and answer segment on Friday. I can't wait. Remember to share this episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand, which is, of course, our goal. The show has been getting so much positive attention that we have been excited to bring on advertising support. This helps us to create more opportunities for Around the Political World with John Rothman. And we hope that you appreciate our advertisers and the work that we are doing. My deep appreciation to Gogo Zoger, the wonderful producer of this podcast. Gogo, you do a great job, and I'm grateful every single day. I am John Rothman. You are listening to Around the Political World with John Rothman, and I will be back tomorrow. And I hope you will be too. See you then.
You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you might not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.